Good morning, all of you. Today we are going to start the Unit 2. In Unit 2, in today's class, we are going to cover process, threads, virtualization, and code migration. So, these are the four topics today we are going to discuss. Uh, process. What is a process? So, this process and threads, these two concepts you have already studied in operating system subject. Again we are going to discuss this process and threads in distributed systems point of view. So what is a process? A process is basically a program in execution. A process is a program in execution. The execution of a process must progress in a sequential manner. So there must be a sequential manner in process execution. We write our computer programs in a text file or word file. When we execute this program, it becomes a process. So whenever we are writing programs, the programs will be a program. When it becomes the execution stage, when that particular program which is written by us becomes in execution stage, then the process begins. When we execute the program, the process, it becomes a process which performs the process performs all the tasks mentioned in the program. When a program is loaded into the memory, for execution, it becomes a process. It can be divided into four sections. The process can be divided into four sections. The sections are stack section, heap section, text section, and data section. So we will see each section. So this is a process structure which contains four sections: stack section, heap section, data section, and text section. Stack section. The process stack. The stack in a process contains the temporary data such as method parameters or function parameters. So what are all the function parameters used in the program that becomes into the stack, that comes into the stack. What are all the function parameters we are using in the program that comes into the stack, and return address of a function and local variables will come to the stack section. So when a process begins, what are all the function parameters we are using in the program, and what is the return address of the function, and what are all the local variables used in the function. So these things will come under that stack section. And coming to heap section, this is dynamically allocated memory to a process during its runtime. So heap section is nothing but a runtime memory which is dynamically when the memory is allocated. So whenever we are using, if you take C or C++, we are creating pointers, no? So the pointers are dynamically allocated memory. So those pointers will come into the heap section. So whatever the memory allocated at runtime, that will come to the heap section. And coming to text section, it includes the current activity represented by the value of program counter. So the program counter's current activity will come into this section. And the contents of the processor's registers. So the processor registers what are all the processor registers content, and what is the program counter's content. So these two things will come into the text section. And coming to data section, this section contains the global and static variables. So whatever the global and static variables we are using in our program, that will come into the data section. Life cycle of a process. So the life cycle of a process has various stages: start state, start state, ready state, running state, waiting state, and termination state. So there are 5 states in the life cycle of a process. Start state. This is the initial state of a process. When a process is first started, when a process is first initiated, then this is called, that particular process is in the starting state. Coming to ready state, the process is waiting to be assigned to a processor. Process may come into this state after start state. So after initiating the starting state, when the process is waiting to be assigned to a processor, that will be in the ready state. Then running state. Once the process has been assigned to a processor, after the process is given to the processor by the operating system scheduler, the process state is set to running. It will come to the running state and the processor executes its instructions. So at this state only the processor executes the instructions. Waiting state. Process moves into the waiting state if it needs to wait for a resource. So when a particular process needs a resource, when that particular resource is used by some other process, then this particular process has to wait. So in that case, that particular process will be in the waiting state. Termination state. Once the process finishes its execution, so once the process finishes its execution part, it is terminated by the operating system. So once execution is finished, the particular process will come into the terminated state. So this is the diagram for the life cycle of a process. Initially it is in the starting state, then it comes to the ready state, then after ready state it may go to wait state or it may go to running state, and from running state also it may go to waiting state or it may go to the previous ready state, and from running state, when the execution is finished, it comes to the terminated state. Next topic is process control block. What is process control block? Process control block is a data structure. Actually it is a data structure maintained by the operating system for every process. For every process there will be a process control block which contains the information about the process. So the process control block PCB is identified by an integer process ID, which is called PID. A process control block keeps all the information needed to keep track of a process. So what are all the informations required for the process, for a particular process, that will be kept in the process control block. So what are all the information which are kept in the process control block? Process state is kept in the process control block. So the current state of a process, that is whether it is ready, running, waiting, termination, whatever it is, what is the current state of a process, that is given by this process state. Process privileges. This is required to allow or disallow access to system resources. So this permits this process privileges information in the process control block, gives access to the system resources. Whether to allow the access to the system resources or not allow the access to the system resources, that is decided by this particular process privileges information. Process ID. So this is a unique identification for each process. There will be a unique number for process ID. Pointer, a pointer to parent class. So this pointer points to the parent process. So if there is a parent, if there are some childs, so this pointer will always point to the parent class from the child class. Program counter. Program counter is actually a pointer to the address of the next instruction to be executed for this process. So if you take a process, so it points to the address of the next instruction which is to be executed for this particular process. CPU registers. So various CPU registers where process need to be stored or stored for execution for running state. So this contains the information about the registers. CPU scheduling information. Process priority and other scheduling information which is required to schedule this particular process will be contained in this CPU scheduling information. Memory management information. So this includes the information of page table, memory limits, segmentation table depending on the memory used by the operating system. So which memory that particular operating system is using, whether it uses page table or it uses the main memory or it uses the segmentation table, based on that this information is stored in the memory management information. Then coming to accounting information, this includes the amount of CPU used for process execution. So for this particular process, how much amount of CPU is used for this particular process execution, that will be given by this accounting information data. IO status information. So this includes a list of input output devices allocated to the process. This IO status information will give you the information about the IO devices allocated to the particular process. So this is a process control block diagram which contains process ID, state, pointer, priority, program counter, CPU registers, input output information, accounting information, etc. Now we move on to next topic, threads. So far we have discussed about process. So what is a process and what is the life cycle of the process, what are the states in the process, and what is process control block, and what are the informations contained in the process control block. This is what we have discussed so far, and now we move on to threads. What is a thread? A thread is a flow of execution through the process code. So it is actually a flow of execution. Thread is a flow of execution with its own program counter that keeps track of which instruction to execute next. System registers which hold its current working variables. A stack which contains the execution history. So what are the information which are kept in the process control block? Process state is kept in the process control block. So the current state of a process, that is whether it is ready, running, waiting, termination, whatever it is, what is the current state of a process, that is given by this process state. Process privileges. This is required to allow or disallow access to system resources. So this permits this uh, process privileges information in the process control block, gives access to the system resources. Whether to allow the access to the system resources or not allow the access to the system resources, that is decided by this particular process privileges information. Process ID. So this is a unique identification for each process. There will be a unique number for process ID. Pointer, a pointer to parent class. So this pointer points to the parent process. So if there is a parent, if there are some childs, so this pointer will always point to the parent class from the child class. So here single threaded and multi-threaded process is given. The left hand side diagram is single threaded process, and in the right hand side diagram is multi-threaded process. In single threaded process we have only single thread that is connected to the code segment, and data and files are there, register, program counter and stack is also there. And here there are three. In multi-threaded process we have three threads. So for each thread we will be having separate register, counter, stack, separate register, counter and stack, and data and files are shared by each thread. What are the differences between process and thread? This is one important thing. We need to know what are the differences of process and thread. In the left hand side we have process, and in the right hand side we have thread. So process is heavyweight process. It is called heavyweight process. Thread is a lightweight, taking lesser resources than a process. Second, process switching needs interaction with the operating system. So process switching from one process to another process, if it is switched like that, it needs interaction with the operating system. It has to interact with the operating system. But when a thread switches to another thread, so the interaction with the operating system is not required. Coming to third point, in multiple processing environments, if you have multiple processes, each process executes the same code but has its own memory and file resources. But in thread, if it goes to multi-threading, if you have multi-threads, all the threads can share same set of open files and child processes. Coming to fourth point, if one process is blocked, then no other process can execute until that blocked process is unblocked. Coming to thread, while one thread is blocked, that means it enters into the waiting state, a second thread in the same task can run it. So one thread is blocked. When one thread is blocked, the other thread can be run. Whereas in process, one process is blocked, other process cannot run. Then coming to fifth point, multiple processes without using threads use more resources. So if multiple processes are there, not using the threads, use more resources. If threads are not used in multiple processes, it uses more resources. In multiple threaded processes, use fewer resources. And coming to sixth point, in multiple processes, each process operates independently. Whereas in thread, one thread can read, write or change another thread's data. That means it is dependent. What are the advantages of thread? Threads minimize the context switching time. So when one thread is switched to another thread in multi-threading, this thread concept minimizes the switching time. Second advantage is use of threads provides concurrency within a process. So multiple threads can be executed concurrently, that is simultaneously within a single process. And third advantage is it is efficient communication. Efficient communication is there in threads. And fourth, it is more economical to create and context switch threads. It is more economical. And coming to fifth advantage, threads allow utilization of multiprocessor architectures to a greater scale and efficiency. So when it comes to multiple threads, so it can be scalable. So any number of threads can be used in threading concept. And we move on to the next topic, which is virtualization in distributed systems. Virtualization is a technology that helps us to install different operating systems on a hardware. So in a hardware, what we are using, different kind of operating systems can be installed. This process is called virtualization. They are completely separated and independent from each other. So even different kinds of operating systems are installed, the operating systems are completely separated with each other and independent from each other. Virtualization is a broad term that refers to the abstraction of computer resources. So virtualization involved in computer resources, abstraction of computer resources. Virtualization hides the physical characteristics of computing resources from their users, their applications or end users. So it hides the physical characteristics of computing resources from their users. Virtualization makes a single physical resource such as server, an operating system, an application or a storage device. So it makes a single physical resource appear to function as multiple virtual resources. So a single physical resource can be functioned as multiple virtual resources. And the reverse is also possible. It can also include making multiple physical resources appear as a single virtual resource. So both can be possible in virtualization. What are the types of virtualization? We have 5 types of virtualization. They are server virtualization, client and desktop virtualization, services and applications virtualization, network virtualization and storage virtualization. Server virtualization. It is virtualizing your server infrastructure. It is nothing but virtualizing your server infrastructure, where you do not have to use any more physical servers for different purposes. We are just virtualizing the server infrastructure here. So this is the diagram for virtualizing server. In the left hand side we have a simple server installation. We have application on operating system, and in that the the server can be installed. In virtualized server, we have applications, operating systems, and whatever the server we need to install, and that can be incorporated here. And whatever the operating system you want to use, you can use it. Client and desktop virtualization is nothing but the virtualization done in client side or desktop side. Both are same. This is similar to server virtualization. So this time is on the user side where you virtualize their desktops. That is, in the client side you can do the virtualization. We can change the client's desktops with thin clients and by utilizing the data center resources. So this is the diagram for the client desktop virtualization. And coming to third one, services and applications virtualization. The virtualization technology, this particular virtualization technology isolates applications from the underlying operating system and from other applications. So it isolates the whatever the applications available in the operating system from other applications in order to increase the compatibility and manageability. So compatibility is increased and manageability is increased. So in order to increase that, it isolates, this kind of technology isolates the applications of the operating system from other applications, other available applications. For example, Docker can be used for that purpose. So this is the diagram for application virtualization. And coming to network virtualization, it is a part of virtualization infrastructure which is used especially if you are going to virtualize your servers. If you are going to visualize your servers. Whenever you want to visualize your servers, then this particular network virtualization is used. It helps you in creating multiple switching like VLANs, NAT, ING, etc. So multiple switching can be done here in network virtualization. So here single threaded and multi-threaded process. And coming to storage virtualization, this is widely used in data centers where you have a big storage, and it helps you to create, delete, allocated storage to different hardware. So this virtualization infrastructure uses the big storage which is called data center, and it helps to create and delete the allocated storage. This allocation is done through network connection. This memory allocation, this storage allocation is done through network connection. The leader on storage is SAN, that is storage area network. So this is the diagram for the last one. And we move on to next topic, which is code migration. What is code migration? Code migration is when programs are moved from one machine to another, often moving parts of its execution environment along with it. So whenever the program code is moved from one machine to another, so the execution environment is also to be moved from one machine to another. So this is called code migration. We are migrating the code from one machine to another. So whenever we are migrating the code from one machine to another, we need to migrate the execution environment also along with the code. So the intent for code migration is for the transferred program to continue execution on the target machine. So Only if you migrate the code without migrating the execution environment, so that particular code cannot be executed in the target machine. So if the execution environment is also migrated along with the code, then the execution is possible. So the intent is for making the execution continued in the target machine. Code migration is actually is the moment of programming code from one system to another. So it is the movement of programming code from one system to another system along with the execution environment. Good morning all of you. Today we are going to start the unit 2. In unit 2, in today's class we are going to cover process, threads, virtualization and code migration. So these are the 4 topics today we are going to discuss. So in today's class we have discussed about process. What is a process? What are the states in the process? And what is the life cycle of a process? What are the states in the process? And what is process control block? And coming to threads, we have discussed about what is a thread and what are the differences between process and threads we have discussed. And we have discussed about virtualization and the types of virtualization also we have discussed. And finally we have discussed about code migration. So with this I conclude today's class. In the remaining part of the second unit will be discussed in the next class. Thank you very much.